Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset, Taliesin and Evitel's wondrous wisdom show in a week, where it is the last moments before the pre-patch and the official start of the War Within. Class changes, skyriding, warbands, pre-patch event, all the other stuff we covered in detail last week. So if you want to hear about any of that, check out that episode, because we're not talking about any of it. No, instead, we have all the updates and new stuff from the War Within beta, including data mined assets for a new War Within login screen. No, another new War Within login screen. We have the catastrophic tank changes, which honestly, you probably aren't even able to watch this video because the literal world is literally over, and we are going to talk Chronicle Volume 4 and all the stuff that doesn't quite make sense about it. So let's get started, as usual, with Evie's beta rundown.
Let's run down! First up are some newly data-mined splash screens for the launch and Season 1, featuring the ubiquitous key art for launch, and this cuddly guy, Zekfir, the Hand of the Harbinger, who will be facing off against in a special 13th delve. This has not been available for testing, and it's been compared to the Mage Tower in terms of style and difficulty. When we spoke to devs in our London trip, Ian Hazakostas himself told us that lots of the team internally could not beat it. So this guy is your way to prove that you are officially better at the game than any Blizz dev. I mean, we know you are already, but officially. We've also seen 4 new achievements in this build, and with them, 4 new titles. Opening 250 Bountiful Delve coffers gives you the Bountiful, while the other 3 are for maxing out rep with figures in Ajkahet, Silk Singer for the Weaver, nice for tailors, Hand of the Vizier for the Vizier, and my personal favorite, maxing out rep with the General makes you Anub. Anub. No, Anub! Traditional Nerubian naming conventions aside, this is possibly the greatest title in-game, right up there with Smelly. Just think of the possibilities. Anub beginning? Anub boyfriend? Anub Ada builds? Let's run down! We have a shiny new map of Azeroth to go with our shiny new expansion. Khazalgar sits snugly just to the southeast of Kalimdor, but the coolest bit? This seemingly tiny isle changes as you hover over it, revealing the massive underground zones beneath it. Nifty! For our delvers, that's what we call them, right? A new weekly world event has been added to the beta, granting increased rewards for completing a delve when it's active. I personally wouldn't mind this one replacing the time walking one. Don't at me, for whatever reason, that's the one I never get around to doing. Okay, that and the PvP one, and the Battle Pit one, even though I'm a girl.
Discovered in the data of this latest beta build are assets for the new War Within login screen. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, I know, Tally. I've seen the new War Within login screen, I think on this channel actually. And look, I'm trying to be nice, okay, but I get it. Swirly fire circle with turny stone edges. You don't need to keep banging on about it. I get it. But no, because that is not the login screen that I am talking about. There aren't many new files in the War Within beta build 55763, but those that are pathed as main menu War Within and have individual file names like Ember, Chunky, and Smoke, Puffy Mask, and Detail, Gem, which yes, all could totally refer to elements on the existing login screen. But also, there are files with names like Clouds and Arcane Wisps and Bush and Middle Ground Left Building and Background Tower, which you'll probably notice sound nothing like the existing login screen. It's fair to say that when this existing screen appeared, the reception among the player base was generally one of disappointment. It was called uninspiring, underwhelming, and like not a literal gate to adventure as WoW menu screens have traditionally been. It has also been heavily speculated right from the off off that this screen wouldn't stay like this and would instead change throughout the expansion, that this was just like a theatre stage curtain that would be raised to reveal something more interesting behind. Well, Wowhead certainly seemed to think that might be the case, and whether it was always the plan or whether this is Blizzard reacting to criticism of the existing screen, if they are right, we might soon have another completely different new login screen to talk way too much about. And I mean, I wouldn't mind betting it's got some clouds and some buildings and braziers and stuff. And a tower. It's going to be Dawn, isn't it?
Let's step away from the beta for a minute to talk about a new book, Chronicle Volume 4, detailing the events that take place in Pandaria through to the end of Shadowlands. Wowhead have pulled together an amazingly in-depth account of clarifications and changes in Volume 4, which is a very polite way of saying retcons. It's time to throw away and replace your wall-size cosmology chart, again, as undead have been removed from the domain of death and replaced with eternal ones. I always thought it was weird that undead were in the death realm. It would be like having unarcane in the arcane realm, unlight in the light realm, unlife in the... Oh, they can go in the death realm. And those big things at the core of Azeroth and other planets are no longer described as sleepy titans, but now world souls. Very handy.
A rather startling mention in the new Chronicle is that it appears to confirm the existence of a fifth old god. As all lore aficionados know, in the established lore, Yasharaj, Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, and the Zoth were the 4 fleshy beings that arrived on Azeroth and turned it into Black Empire Tentaculinus. Before the Titans arrived, killed Yasharaj, and imprisoned the other 3 where they stood. A brilliant idea which completely solved the problem and has had no unintended consequences at all. Thank you, Titans. But Chronicle 4 describes the Zoth as being one of the 5 old gods that ruled over the Black Empire. So there were 5. But wait, because then, also in Chronicle 4, it is remarked that the Titans found and imprisoned 4 when they arrived, which not only changes the established lore, but surely is inconsistent even to itself. That's what Reddit said. It's inconsistent even to itself. So what exactly is going on here? Well, it's probably worth noting at this stage that saying there were 5 old gods is actually consistent with one of the oldest lore books in the entire game. The Old Gods and the Ordering of Azeroth, a book from Vanilla, says that there were 5 old gods, a fact that everyone assumed had been retconned by there being, 4. But this book reappeared in Dragonflight with added new annotations by, almost certainly, Neltharion. Annotations that disagree with and correct pretty much everything in the entire book except the mention of the 5th old god, which it seems completely fine with. So from then, it has seemed pretty clear to people paying attention that Blizzard do seem to be actively setting up the existence of this 5th fella for whatever reason, and Chronicle 4 saying there were 5 old gods, just a continuation of that. And what could that reason be? Well, there might be a clue back in Legion, where the Word of the Conclave, the history of the priest artifact weapons in their order hall, says of the Shadow Priest artifact weapon, the Blade of the Black Empire, or, Xalatath. Oh wait, maybe this could be relevant. There are many theories concerning the blade's creation. The more outlandish claim that it is all that remains of a forgotten old god who was consumed by its kin in the early days of the Black Empire. 5! And if the other old gods consumed that 5th old god before the Titans arrived, 4! Maybe not. Chronicle says the Titans imprisoned 4 old gods, and they certainly did chain up Cthulhu, Yogg, and the Zoth, but they plucked Yasharaj out like a tick. That's what caused the huge open wound that was the Well of Eternity. That's why they decided they couldn't do that again and had to imprison the other 3. So if they actually imprisoned 4, that also tracks with there being 5 overall, because Yasharaj was not imprisoned. What I'm saying is, and you're not going to believe this, but in my opinion, Reddit was incorrect, and actually Chronicle 4 does not contradict itself with this old god stuff. But who is this old god? Could it be this beautiful boy depicted in the fresco in the City of Threads? I don't know, I just like looking at it. Also, and this is kind of on topic, but we get a new named Void Lord in the new Chronicle. Only our 2nd ever. The Warsong Dark Shaman in the Grand, it turns out, funneling their shadowy power to the Void Lord Invalidus. Invalidus? No, that's really scary, really imposing. I mean, not quite as terrifying as Not Working Us or This Page Does Not Exist Us, but still, yeah, really great name there, great baddie.
Having a canonical order of events in an expansion like Legion, where players could choose the order in which they leveled zones, can create a little dissonance. In my case, I did them literally the opposite way they describe in the book. But the book lays them out this way for narrative clarity, and it ultimately doesn't have a huge effect on story outcomes in the Broken Isles. However, this kind of approach to BFA, where each faction had its own war campaign and storyline, has created more than a little friction, or fiction, some might argue. Most notably, the Chronicle timeline puts the entire Alliance leveling experience chronologically before the Horde leveling experience.
And this is my personal biggest issue with Chronicle 4. All of the events of the Alliance Tiras leveling campaign, so Jaina deciding to go home to recruit the Tirans, getting thrown in jail, rescuing Jaina from Thros, and her becoming High Admiral and defeating Ashvane, happen before the Horde break Talangian Zul out of Stormwind stockades in this book, which is a bit clunky, but would be fine, I guess, if the exact opposite thing didn't happen in-game. Because if you start a new Alliance character in-game right now and select the BFA story to level through in Chromie time, the story all new players are put into, by the way, for another day, then the very first thing that happens is you are sent to a meeting with Jaina, Anduin, and Gen, where they literally talk about how the Horde has just broken Talangi and Zul out of the stockades. And then Jaina literally says, oh shit man, that's bad. I should go to Tiras and recruit them because it sounds like we're gonna need them now that the Horde are buddies with the Zandalari since they just broke Talangi and Zul out of the stockades. Hey adventurer, you should come with me to Tiras for the first time ever, and we should have an adventure because of the stockades thing. Maybe you think that's not a big deal, and I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's not. But the reason I'm so annoyed by it is because it's so pointless. This wasn't a problem that needed solving or clarifying or cleaning up like the whole of Shadowlands did. It's clear as day in the game and always has been. It being changed not only doesn't fix anything, not only doesn't make anything better, it makes a huge problem, because now either the game which you can play right now is wrong, or Chronicle is, to the extent that I feel this just has to be a mistake. Like, they couldn't have done this on purpose, right? I'm happy to admit BFA is an expansion that I care a lot more about than most other people, because I personally believe it was a stone cold banger in every single way, except one, but I hate this. It's needless rearranging of a timeline that makes it way worse, and also which must have been loads more effort to write than just meanwhile. That's all you had to write when you were talking about the Alliance and Horde campaigns, Blizz. Just meanwhile? That's all you had to do. Meanwhile? Why didn't you just write meanwhile?
Also, Chronicle 4 says that Thrall did not cheat when we all know he definitely cheated.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. But even the fluffiest comic or short story becomes enshrined in the canon the instant it comes out. This is one of the challenges of telling a story over 20 years through multiple expansions and writers and directors and 2 opposing factions and millions upon millions of heroes, champions, whatever you want to call us, the players. Oh, and Chronicle 4 does call us players at one point. They're learning. They know. Who are all protagonists of their own stories. It's a lot to think about. And creating a canonical timeline only serves to narrow things down when I, again personally, love a bit of consequence-free, non-related world building instead.
And lastly today, I don't really want to do this, but we have to talk about tanking and its place within WoW's Holy Trinity. No, not that Holy Trinity, because it has been one of the main topics of the week, with Blizzard's new extensive nerfs to the role, which obviously we're not going to cover here in the kind of detail that specialists like Quasi can, but we are a news show, and the TLDR is Blizzard have some stated objectives here with regards to tank survivability and healing. We've talked on this show before about the panicked discourse around mitigation and the fact that in Dragonflight it's often possible to not even bother taking a healer into a dungeon, and how in The War Within, with hero talents nearly always bringing even more self-mitigation to every class, that would only make the problem worse and healers less mandatory in the coming expansion, which in a game based on the Holy Trinity, not that Holy Trinity, is a problem. So the intention behind these tank nerfs is basically to make tanks take more damage, but less spiky damage. I guess making the line on their damage chart more even, just higher up, meaning that they're going to need more consistent, constant healing. The intention is that tank gameplay shouldn't really change and certainly not see a return to the kiting style of Shadowlands Mythic Plus. And the intention is that tank healing should not take up the majority of healer gameplay. Noble intentions, honestly, but intentions are easy. It's my honest intention to make you laugh about WoW and be impressed by my lovely jackets. You drop a quid on our Patreon and I can afford wine this month and sometimes food for my kids. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. And as for these tank changes, well, initial responses on the forums were that it's a shit show, obviously. Blizz actively trying to kill their game again. Blizz need to fire a few devs. Honestly, I feel like Blizzard is on the verge of potentially killing tanking as a role when it comes to Mythic Plus. They don't know what they're doing. Hire new devs, preferably people that actually play WoW. Yes, it is not a misrepresentation to say that in the eyes of much of the community, tanking in WoW is now dead, and it's the healers that killed them. Or, attempts to not make healers extinct that killed them. And actually, it probably is worth pointing out that in general, from what we've seen, healers are pretty happy with these changes, with most specs seeing substantial buffs to their single target heals, and noting this week from what I've seen that yes, they did have to keep more of an eye on tanks than in Dragonflight, and yes, they overall were spending a lot more time healing the dungeon in general, and that is good, because that is after all their job in the Holy Trinity, not that one. So that's all nice, that's all lovely, but it's no good saving one of the Holy Trinity, not that one, at the expense of another, is it? So what about tanks? It is early days, so I'm having to choose my words very carefully here, but reports seem to be saying that it's not actually all that terrible, it's just a case of tuning right now. Personally, I think, and you can hate me for this, but one of the problems here is that tanks have just got so used to being completely self-sufficient, which ironically, at most levels of the game, is one of the reasons it's so intimidating to be a tank right now. Like, at the moment, your job is to lead the way through the dungeon, do all the tank mechanics, do a ton of damage, and on top of that, if you die, it's your fault because you shouldn't really need a healer most of the time. Taking away one element of that, putting some of the responsibility for you staying on your feet at the healer's feet is logical, and it's good, but it is going to need some tweaking because not every tank is a brewmaster. So if we're going to do this, then the dungeons do actually have to be changed to have a more steady damage profile, which they don't always right now. In fact, if anything, the dungeons seem to be quite over-tuned going into War Within. If we're going to do this, tanks should probably generally have more stamina across the board to help with it. And there's also a pretty good argument that says, is all of this targeted at the wrong role to begin with? Wouldn't it be better to reduce DPS mitigation, which is currently also off the charts? Wouldn't that make healers healers again and be a more fitting shape to the Holy Trinity, not that one at that? All very good points. Glad you brought them up. And if we were having this conversation 2 months ago, then I think there would be a lot less panic in the community. But Season 1 of War Within will be rolling out in 6 weeks. And so there's a justifiable feeling that whatever happens right now is likely to be locked in. So I get the worry, I get the urgency in the feedback, I get the seriousness of the issue at hand, and I think it is very worth following this closely in the weeks ahead. Actually, I would love to hear your opinions on it, your experiences if you've done any testing, in the comments below. Evitel, is this a sofa bit?
Are we on a sofa?
Were we ever on the sofa? Ooh. Chronicle 4 says we were always on the sofa. Chronicle 4 says we were on the sofa before we even bought our sofa. So you've got a very special message to give, haven't you?
There is. So I'm here to share. I'm very excited to tell you that we're adding a new member to the T&E family in the form of a Red Spoiler Bot Plushie.
Oh,
I know what you're thinking.
You tease.
I know what you're thinking.
Wait, a spoiler. I thought, just like everyone else who was watching this video, that you were about to reveal we were having a baby, which would have been a surprise to me. But I think we can all agree this is much better. A Red Spoiler Bot Plushie.
Exactly.
That's so much fun. That's incredible. Think of all the things we could do with that.
Exactly.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we've partnered with Makeship. If you've never seen a Makeship plushie before, get on that because they're so cute. They're adorable. They work with loads of like companies and creators and people, anyone, just to bring plushies to life. So what we've done, we've got a petition which is going live on Monday, the 22nd at 10 a.m. UK time, at which point you can make a pledge to support the plushie if it goes into production. And we're looking for a certain number of people to sign up and support this plushie thing. If it happens, hooray, amazing, we get a plushie and you get it. If it doesn't...
So it's basically like a GoFundMe, right?
Exactly.
So you go on and you have to pay like a returnable deposit, which obviously you get back if they don't make the plushie.
It's literally $2.
And if we get enough pledges, then they make the plushie.
Exactly, which is really exciting. And then it goes into kind of like production and we get prototypes and we get to see what it might look like. We get to share it with you.
Well, I know what it's going to look like. If it's going to look like a Red Spoiler Bot.
Yeah, but like...
It's going to look like my little boy, my little man. I want little arms. Right, Evie, I'm so excited about this because there are so many applications to this, right? Like, for example, when we're on a video, instead of having a graphic when we're doing Red Spoiler Bot, I can have like the real thing and put it on my desk or whatever. And even if your name isn't Taliesin or Evitel, you can do it in your everyday life.
Exactly.
Like, you know, yeah, if anyone's like, hey, was that movie good? And you're like, no. Or your kid is like, hey, mummy, how are babies made? And you're like, you're not going to like this.
Or I really like the idea of someone's talking and they're like, oh my gosh, I finished watching The Bear, and you just whip out, you're like, no.
Yeah. Oh, so you use it as a warning.
Exactly. Like, excuse me.
Like a shield.
No
like,
spoilers.
Back spoilers.
Exactly. In my
Get
mind,
behind me, spoilers.
Exactly. In my mind, he's like a protector. The Red Spoiler Bot has always been a protector. He's like, this is a spoiler-free zone. You can just have him on your desk and you're like, nothing's going to bother me. Nothing's going to ruin my immersion today.
Okay, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the link to the exact page you need to go to to like pre-order this thing. And you can go on there and you can do. I'm going to do 10. Is 10 enough to get it made? I'll do 11 if I have to.
I think we might need more than
all right. People can go there and they can pledge, and hopefully we'll get a little Red Spoiler Bot with his little string arms and stuff like that. Oh my goodness. Good news. I was reading Chronicle 4 earlier, and it told me that the Red Spoiler Bot, like everyone's already bought it.
Oh,
the exact amount of people that we needed. They all bought it even before we even decided to do it.
That's amazing.
Which might seem like a strange timeline, but that's what Chronicle says in Chronicle's canon. So you should probably go and check the link anyway, just to make sure.
Just to be safe.
This is so exciting. I'm so glad we had this sofa bit.
Me too. I love being on the sofa.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who still, even now, give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And patrons, seriously, thank you, because if it weren't for you, there'd be a whole lot less Taliesin Evitel. My name is Taliesin, thank you. I think they liked that, Evitel.
Actually, Tally, I hate to break it to you, but I was just reading Chronicle 4, and everyone absolutely hated it and downvoted the shit out of it.
Oh, okay. My name's Drapnos. Cheerio.